Okay, so may tanong ako sa'yo.
Okay.
Mahilig ka ba sa plastic?
Ayoko sa plastic, Marge. But I think
Wait.
unavoidable sila eh. Pakalat-kalat
okay.
talaga ang
Yeah,
plastic
oo.
sa mundo.
So, okay, so did you know
Yeah.
that studies show 1 in 3 fish caught for human consumption contains microplastics?
Oh my God, they're even in our food now.
Yeah. So like if you're eating your bangus later tonight, there is a really good chance that there will be microplastics in what you're eating.
So, pakalat-kalat talaga ang basura.
Yeah.
And plastics. So, for our next panel, we will be talking about plastics, guys. Paano may iwasan, paano may reduce, and how can we better live with it?
All right. So to talk about plastics and basura and how to get rid of them, we have our moderator, Rappler reporter Pia Ranada, and she will introduce the rest of the panel on stage.
Let's give her a hand.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm Pia Ranada and I'm a reporter of Rappler. A lot of you might know me as the Rappler's reporter covering the Office of the President, Malacanang. So you'd be wondering what's she doing moderating a panel about the environment. But actually my first beat was the environment. My first news beat was covering the environment. So it's actually a great beat and ironically, mas toxic pa mag-cover ng politics kaysa sa pollution and garbage. So I'm actually really happy to be here talking about a new topic or a topic that I've long loved to cover. So I guess we can start by introducing our speakers today. So we have Monique Obligacion, who is from Buhay Zero Waste. It's a Facebook group wherein people talk about how they can, live minimally and conserve and also, reduce their waste. And also we have Joy Munsayak Kakal from Coca-Cola Philippines. She's a sustainability manager, so she's here to talk to us about private sector efforts to make sure that we reduce our waste. We also have Dr. Fabian Toby Dairit, the Vice President of the National Academy of Science and Technology. And lastly, we have Melody Melo Reich from Worldwide Fund Philippines. Worldwide Fund for Nature Philippines, so WWF Philippines. Thank you so much for being here. She's a project manager leading a project called the Sustainable Diner. All right, so let's get to it. Ayan. Okay, so plastics. Actually, pollution is one of the most annoying things rin about living in Metro Manila because it's an eyesore. We see it on the streets. We see it everywhere. It's in our schools, it's in our backyard, it's in Manila Bay, right? So aside from traffic, parang it's something that we have to live with, sadly. And it's something so much in our culture that I think Filipinos are the only language that has plastic in our everyday usage, diba? When we say, plastic ng taong to, diba? Why we wonder, ganun ba ka-ubiquitous and common yung use of plastic that we have it in our language, we use it every day. So I guess my question first would be, why is it that the Philippines, there's also been a study in 2015 that says that the Philippines is the 3rd largest contributor of garbage in our oceans. Imagine little Philippines contributes the 3rd biggest amount. So what is it about Filipino culture or our society that makes us so wasteful? Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Hello? Hello. Good afternoon. There. Good afternoon. Okay, I want to answer this question, but I don't want to answer it in the context of culture. If the question's more phrased around what makes the Philippines unique, how come we're the 3rd largest producer of ocean waste in the world, tiny Philippines. We're actually the 2nd largest archipelago in the world. We're second to Indonesia, which also happens to be the 2nd largest polluter of the oceans. And basically, the problem is that all of us, all upstanding citizens in the world, throw trash in trash cans, properly throw trash in trash cans. We've been conditioned to think that for as long as we throw our waste in the proper place, then we're doing our job as good, upstanding citizens. But the problem is not actually littering. It's not throwing your waste improperly. It's that we have waste to throw in the first place. And since we're an archipelago, so say for example, you throw your trash in a trash bin, it's taken to a landfill, or rather in the Philippines, because we don't really have proper landfills, we just have open dump sites. That waste, it winds up in the ocean because we're a very typhoon-ridden archipelago, and technically all of our dump sites aren't in the middle of like vast, expanses of land. So there's always access to waterways. So a huge percentage of waste that we properly throw actually winds up out there. And I feel, that's why we're like the third largest generator of waste. It's more that our waste has access to the waterways. And then on top of this, we're not just, Filipinos were more than 100 million in population. So it's not just us being upstanding citizens throwing our waste in the trash bins and then it winds up in the ocean. We all know, we see it in the news that we occasionally also import waste from more developed countries. So that becomes our waste too. And then that also winds up in the ocean. And then we're to blame.
Apart from the smuggled waste that also gets into our country.
Yes, but basically it's the problem of the whole world. We've been conditioned to think that there's a proper way to dispose of waste, and that the issue is not properly throwing waste when we're all actually contributing to this problem. Because we perpetuate that belief that, for as long as I'm throwing it in the trash can, I'm okay.
Right. Do you have any inputs on that?
Of course. Definitely, number one, the reason why we have a lot of plastics is for the convenience part. So a lot of us have been slaves of convenience. Most of us would, bring these sachets because it's easier to carry. It's something that would be very convenient for us. Second would be, I think, the purchasing power of the Filipinos. Basically, we are the tingi capital. We try to buy things in small amounts, or we don't tend to buy in bulks. Basically, it's also another problem. I think I won't go into that, but that's another problem. And the third is, I think we lack regulations in terms of producing plastics more, where in fact we don't have a lot of facilities that would really repurpose, recycle plastics. So I guess those three factors are the reasons why we have a lot of plastics here in the Philippines.
Yeah, maybe I'd like to, at least for the Philippines, the plastic waste management is governed by the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act 9003, which was promulgated in the year 2000. Now, of course, the plastic problem has exploded since then. And if you analyze the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act, a lot of the responsibility is given to the barangays and then the city. But then they're not really equipped to handle plastic. So we've given this responsibility to them, and all of them put it, actually if you look at the law, the ultimate place is the dump site. So it's really designed that it's an end-of-pipe treatment where everything goes to the dump site. So we have to reimagine plastic as a value chain, which includes the management of the waste. And the waste has to find some commercial value, otherwise it's just going to be dumped. Now, regarding the itong tingi culture, actually it's part of Philippine culture. Ang sari-sari store is a tingi store. And the sari-sari store is really ingrained in small communities. Bigyan mo ng konting pera yung mahirap, magtatayo ng sari-sari store, at lahat ang bibenta dyan, mga maliliit na bagay. So if you're gonna try to attack the use of sachets, then you have to consider the sari-sari store. Kasi ang mga mayayaman, pupunta sa supermarket. Ang mga mahirap, sa sari-sari store. And so there you have it. So you really can't solve the sachet issue unless we address it's a socio-economic issue. And it's not simple. I don't have a solution to it. Certainly, managing the collection is one thing, but then after you've collected it, saan naman yan pupunta? So this is where you have to bring in industry. So in fact, if you look at the solid waste management, there's no attention to industry. There's no attention to research. The recycling of plastic is actually a technical problem. It's very, I don't have time to talk about the different types of plastics. There are maybe 30 kinds of plastics, and the only thing we're familiar with are the PET bottles, HDPE. There are many more plastics, and so we need a lot more technology in handling plastic waste. So maybe I'll just end there for now. Thank you.
Yeah, so they've said all of the points already, but I can't help but agree, it's really a cultural, economic standpoint, scientific, technological standpoint. But at the end of the day, I think we have this plastic problem in the ocean because we failed to close the loop of the plastic. So it's something that we use, it's something that it can be repurposed, and it's something that we can tight seal to avoid leakage in the environment, thus solving the ocean plastic issue and all of the microplastics being discussed earlier. So yeah, it's creating that kind of environment. So agreed that, we have a very underdeveloped recycling industry in the Philippines. In fact, we don't have yet a really large scale because, plastic there, I don't want to call it a waste because there's no waste. We do believe that waste is just a displaced resource. It's a resource that we can use again and again, over and over again. It's just a matter of placing that mechanism, that system, that environment that will make this easy for everyone who use the material. Every one of us uses this, not just the corporate, not just everyone in the community. So how do we make it possible for the community, every single one of the community, have access to that right kind of environment where everything I put there gets recycled, gets reused. So zero leakage talaga dapat tayo sa environment.
So you mentioned something. Sorry, you wanted to add something?
May I add something
Yeah,
on the basically the stuff that was mentioned after I spoke? I want to say something about plastic, and technically plastic isn't something that you can keep like recycling. So there are 8.3 billion tons of plastic ever produced in the world. All of that's pretty much still out in the environment. Only 9% or less than 9% of that has ever been recycled. And even if you recycle plastic, it's finite. There are only a certain number of times you can actually recycle plastic, and those times are like very, very few, like 1, 2, 3 times. So recycling is really not the solution. I'm going to pull an architect's statement here, like what during the Transpo talk earlier. Plastic is not the problem. Plastic is the symptom. The real problem here is, well, 2 problems. One, it's really just overpopulation. Let's face it, there's just too many of us. And the second is consumption. It's not just about, we have to stop thinking about just the product getting to us and then like, oh, how do we dispose of this? We also have to, we don't just think downstream of our disposals, we have to think upstream of our purchases. So for as long as I'm buying something in plastic, whether that gets recycled or whatever happens to it after, even if what happens to it is good, it will still eventually turn into something, well, into a pollutant. it will still leach chemicals into the ground. It will still not biodegrade. It's going to either sit in a landfill forever to outlive our children, our children's children, and their children, or wind up in the bellies of wildlife.
So actually, I wanted to also, jumping off from what you said and what Joy said, about closing the loop, diba? I think it's a major solution that different levels of society can take, from the individual up to the barangay, up to the province, up to the national government. So my next question would be, how would you recommend individuals or communities to close the loop in their own ways?
Yeah, so for WWF Philippines, we have our global initiative, what we call No Plastics in Nature by 2030. So let me clear that the initiative does not ask everyone to eliminate plastics, but rather we prevent it from not entering the ecosystem. Because let's face it, real talk nga, sabi ni Yorme kanina, no, real talk lang tayo, na yung plastics, inevitable siyang hindi gamitin for some reasons. For some reasons, especially in food handling and food safety issues, kailangan yung, or ginagamit siya madalas. But then again, the main point here is, hindi po yung plastic yung naglalakad sa ocean, hindi siya naglalakad doon mag-isa, at pagpapalutang-lutang lang siya doon. Hindi ganon ang sistema ng plastic. Merong dahilan bakit siya napunta doon, merong dahilan bakit siya hindi na-dispose ng maayos, and that is the struggle of the RA 9003. It's the implementation part of making these things happen, material recovery, recycling. But for citizens like us, the very first thing that you can close the loop is by refusing the use of single-use plastics. Yun ang pinakauna. Otherwise, we will still continue to create new plastics. And when you create new plastics, you need raw materials, virgin materials, and that will not solve the problem. It will eat up resources. And right now, the world is been using 1.7 planets na. And considering that we only have one, meaning we are already borrowing resources for from our future generations. And it's really sad because by 2030, we need 2 planets already. So I suggest the very first thing, okay, there are policies, there are regulations, but the first thing that you have to do as citizens, as Filipinos, would be to refuse the use of single-use plastics. Yun ang siguro
So
first
that's tip
advice
number
ko.
1. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have other recommendations?
Yeah, I think the most, the thing which certainly all people can address is single-use plastic. But we have to, well, maybe I'd like to go to that thing about microplastics, since it's been mentioned so many times. Microplastics have probably been there for the past 50 years. Ngayon lang siya nakita kasi ngayon lang tinignan. And then after microplastics, you have nanoplastics. You know, they all eventually break down. Now, I think it's not possible for us to take back all the nanoplastics and microplastics. So they're going to be there. Fortunately, wala pa namang namamatay sa microplastics. Although, of course, it's a reality that I think we'll have to accept. Now, on the other end, I think we have to rope in the role of industry, because it's industry that designs and produces the plastics. And we really have to redesign. The 3 R's, we have to move to the 4 R's. You have reduce, reuse, recycle. But even when you produce the material, you have to redesign it. And we haven't really gone to that level. So you can really only close the loop if you come up with materials which are more recyclable. For example, aside from the plastics, we don't talk about the chemical additives that are put into the plastics. You know, the plasticizers, the flame retardants, additives which prevent it from degrading in the sun. In fact, there's so many things in the plastic which you don't know about. You probably know about polyethylene, but you don't know the other stuff that's in polyethylene. For example, polyethylene alone will burn, but the material you buy doesn't burn because there's so many additives added to it, so it doesn't burn. So meron dyan mga fire retardants. Now, all of these things add to the toxicity of plastics when they're disposed of. So while we have to address the problem of consumerism, we have to produce better plastics. And I think we have to force industry to own up to their responsibility to produce better materials. And then, of course, on our end, since we're the consumers, we certainly have to refuse, plastics which we know are harmful.
Wow, I can't help but agree on the points there, especially on the science part. There are so many kinds of plastics. There are 8 types right now, I think, in the industry. But as a company that's into manufacturing, we have to make that conscious decision to choose packaging, safe packaging for beverages and food that are highly recyclable. So I just wanted to share also in this plenary right now that at Coca-Cola Philippines, all of our packaging are 100% recyclable, from plastic, glass, aluminum that we use. It's 100% recyclable. And
Wow,
just
that's
last June, we actually announced this bold commitment on a world without waste. So how we will do that? As cited by Sir, we need to rethink packaging. We need to start thinking better packaging for our beverages. So 100% recyclable packaging. And by year 2030, our ambitious goal is to collect every single packaging that we put out there. So how we will do that? By investing in the recycling industry. We actually announced a 1 billion peso investment on PET recycling. So hopefully that will be up and running by the year 2020.
Will that be a global?
Yes, it's a global, all of the 200 plus countries where Coca-Cola is, World Without Waste is going to be implemented.
Yeah.
So
Hopefully you can convince all the plastic manufacturers to join you.
join us.
Good, that's good news. How many bottles are we talking about, like in your production line? Just the impact of that policy that you have.
Oh, globally, I think 117 billion bottles. The objective is to collect all of that and equivalent all of that, so we can say that we are packaging neutral. We used it, we recycled it, we turned it into a bottle again. Because the only way that I see really closing the loop of a PET bottle is from PET, you use it, and it turns again into a PET bottle used for the same beverage. So yeah, we actually have piloted that already with our Viva mineral water, and hopefully all of the PET using brands will also use our PET. So there's a small R now in the PET, recycled PET. Yeah.
Well, talking about rin, diba? So that's a really laudable effort what Coca-Cola is doing. But there are also parang may debate then that when you say redesign, there's even a more radical notion. Like I'm not sure if you guys have heard of markets or groceries wherein bawal na talaga magdala ng anything like bottles. Like you have to bring your own bottle, your own glass bottle. And if you want to buy shampoo, for example, or milk, hindi na pwedeng boxes that you buy off the shelf. But it's like a more of a mass-produced thing that you bring your bottle, and then you dispense it from a bigger container, and then you come back with your old bottle, get it again. So these kinds of redesign systems, do you think this can work in the Philippines? I mean, we see it abroad, we see it in the States. It's a big trend there. Could this work?
That's where we come in.
Your Facebook group, diba? You promote those kinds of stores.
Yes,
efforts.
so we are Buhay Zero Waste. We have more than 44,000 members in our community online and growing. And hopefully after today, there are more that join in. And this may sound a bit, not in line with the things that were mentioned earlier, except for what WWF mentioned. But what we advocate is zero waste. So for us, there actually are 5 R's, not the 3 that are taught in school or in wherever. So there's refuse first, there's reduce, there's reuse, there's recycle, and there's rot. And us, the way that we practice it, we go down that pyramid, and we do things in that order. So for us, it's not about redesigning packaging or, for us, it's buying things package free. It's refusing the things that we don't need in our lives, one of which is plastic. And that's just one of the very, very many things. So we also refuse like chemicals. We no longer buy things that aren't necessary to like our existence. When I say refuse, it's not just about refusing, disposable containers. I'm gonna veer slightly away from plastic. But this is refusing pretty much like everything that could possibly turn into waste. So if you don't want waste, rule number one, don't take it, don't bring it home. So whether that's like a plastic soda bottle, a glass bottle, a business card that was handed to you by somebody, junk mail, a flyer, just refuse it because that'll ultimately turn into waste. The next thing that we do is we reduce. So we reduce what we have. That way, if we get rid of things that we don't need, that just pollute our own homes and our environments with stuff, then we open up like the second-hand market becomes bigger, and the items that we don't need, other people might need, that will prevent them from buying new things if they get your items instead. When you don't buy new things, you help with the climate crisis because you don't buy things that take resources, fuel, energy to produce. And then we go down to like reusing. I think everybody knows what that means. And recycling is at the very bottom of that. We only choose like recyclables if we can't refuse it, reduce or reuse it in the first place. It's at the bottom. It's not something that we should go to as like the main thing, like where, oh, it's recyclable naman, so I'll buy it. Because recycling is not a sustainable practice. It has like pollutants, it uses up resources, fuel, energy, all that stuff again.
Yeah, I think I'd like to echo what I think si Yorme nagsabi. In the end, it really depends on the people. The people have to buy into it. And here I'm talking about the common people. Pumunta ka ng palengke, bibili ng isda, kailangan mo ng plastic. Yung mabibili ng soft drink, nilalagay yan sa plastic. And if it's that lifestyle you have to address. So it's not the lifestyle of the rich I'm worried about. Because I think the rich can adjust. It's actually the poor. Kasi sila yung maraming gumagamit ng plastic. Ano ba, yung tanong mo sa mahirap, anong gagawin nila? Plastic bag o supot na papel? Gagamit sila ng plastic bag kasi alam nila yung supot, mabasa ng konti, sira na. So, while it's good that, I think it's excellent if we could actually just do, bring our own refillables. But I don't know, we have to think it through. How will the poor people, who actually are the ones who throw away a lot of plastic, how will they adjust their lifestyle to this? And I think that's the challenge. We have to develop our own models and consider how the poor people actually, use plastic.
How do they live? Yeah, it has to be with their lifestyle and
They use
their concerns.
They use a lot of plastic. Yeah.
I think the main point here is that for consumers, we have to create an enabling environment wherein they would really adhere to that sort of culture that you are saying. And I think the youth now, here, present, should be advocating for social enterprises that would cater to that kind of environment that consumers would eventually go to that, to that way. To have their own containers and just use dispensers. I think it will work. For now, there are just a few social enterprises that offer that kind of, advocacy. But definitely, if the industries can also participate on that, it will reduce eventually their cost. If you come to think of it, when you reduce your plastic packaging, you will reduce your cost as well. So it's something that we should do it in a multi-sectoral approach. It's not only the consumers, but it's also the industry. Of course, we have the governments to back it up all. Yeah.
Agree on that. I mean, it should be a multi-sectoral, and the private sector as the manufacturer block have a very important role in there. In fact, in the company, there's been initiative in the last 10 years, I guess, in lightweighting the use of the material. Because, the tingi system, sabi nga ni Sir, malaking portion of our population is really dependent on that. It's their purchasing power. This is how much I can buy for the day or for the week, for my family and all that. But yeah, we have all points in there. But on the manufacturing side, again, I dial back on rethink the packaging, give options, per lifestyle. So we have a mix of glass. Glass is actually more than 50% of our packaging up until now. And then there's plastic, there's aluminum. And sir, I agree. We discourage. You can drink Coca-Cola in the bottle. Don't transfer it anymore in a single-use plastic and straw. Please don't. You can get it from the fridge, cold, drink up straight. It's very safe to do that. So there, it's lifestyle, right? It's lifestyle. But we have to address the lifestyle. So especially when it comes to food and beverage, as pointed out by our friend from WWF. So if there's a graduated decision-making on what packaging material you will get rid of, or get rid of the things that you can get rid of, but don't sacrifice the quality, the safety, and the sanitation of things that we put in our body.
Okay,
Like,
so unfortunately we don't
eat.
have...
Yeah, we eat and drink. Sorry.
We don't have time anymore, so we have a target time to run after. But I think that the discussion has been thought-provoking because it's just parang driving home the point that problems like traffic, garbage, they're so complex. It won't take a single sector or session to talk about all of the solutions, and it requires a multifaceted approach. So with that, thank you so much to our speakers. We wish we could have more time to discuss this extremely pressing problem. But yeah, thank you so much. And again, we can please join in the efforts of our speakers to reduce our waste and to live more environmentally friendly lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.